Okay, yeah. So I mentioned before that you guys do have a part that you guys can play in these types of events, right? This is not just a one group of people problem, right? It's a problem with the whole country. All right. The reason I say it's a I even if you're not African American, right? The reason I say it's a problem with the whole country is because uh, you as people of the United States, right, are protected by the First Amendment, which guarantees you the freedom of speech. Right, you're allowed to express and say what you feel or how you feel about certain things. You also have the right to petition or protest. Right, that's within the First Amendment. So, because of that, right, it's within your power to make change, right, through your voice, right. If you stay silent, right, if you don't say anything, then you're essentially relinquishing or giving up that power. And by doing so, that's one less person on one side of the argument, while which means um, which means fewer people for the opposing side to really have to deal with, right? So in a way, you're kind of strengthening the opponent by staying silent, right? So that's why it's really important that you actually exercise and use your First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So, however you feel on any topic, it's important to remember that, right? If everyone relied on other people to speak, right? Like I said, if this is like another person's problem, pretty much the world would be silent, right? No one would speak their mind because they're just assuming, oh, someone else is going to deal with it, right? Imagine if everyone else said, "Oh, someone else is going to deal with it." At the end of the day, no one's going to deal with it, right? And it is your responsibility as members of society to stand up for what you believe is right, right? Think of it as like if you aren't willing to do it for others, then what happens when you need someone to do it for you, right? It's a part of this like deal that you essentially have made by being a part of this community, right? Some of you guys aren't here out of your own choice, right? Because you're kids. However, as members, despite whether or not it's by choice or not, um, it is our job to make sure that people are essentially following the rules that are set by the rest of society, right? Whether that's in the form of laws or just like moral rules, right? The idea of being a good person, right? We want everyone to be a good person. Um, so an example of this, right, of using your voice, right, and exercising your First Amendment right is uh, let's say, I know this is a pretty common thing, right? I see you guys all at lunch. You hate the food that you get during lunchtime, okay? But no one says anything. No one speaks up about the fact that you guys don't like the food, right? So if no one says anything, is the food ever going to change? No, right? So if only, but and let's say you have a few people, right? 10 kids out of the 400 something kids that actually attend the school. Let's say only 10 kids are brave enough to actually exercise their right to freedom of speech, right? Is that still enough? Probably not, right? So you can't think of it as like, oh, someone else is going to do the job, right? And you definitely can't think of it as, well, if it's just me, then not like it's not going to do anything, right? You add to the collective, right? If you start to say something, then instead of 10 people, that's 11 people. And then since someone sees, oh, 11 people are talking about it, well, what if I make it 12, right? It's easier to join a group that's larger, right? So then more people start to join. 13, 14, 15. Sooner or later, you're going to hit the numbers that you actually need. And sooner or later, the people who can make that change will understand that the food needs to change, right? So if some of you guys might remember, maybe not fifth graders, but some of you guys might remember, we did have a time when we had you guys sampling food, right? You guys, enough of you guys communicated to us, oh, we don't like the food, we don't like the food. So what happened? The company that we used to make, to partner up with for the food, brought you guys some new food to try out. Then you guys were able to write down, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? Right? And ultimately that food that you guys chose was put into the menu, right? So that's one example of using your First Amendment right. Um, and just to remind you guys, uh, this type of that example that I gave you, obviously it's much smaller than what's going on right now. However, if you expand it into a larger scale, into that size, that you can end up making a result.